Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Man in America. I'm your host, Seth Holhouse. Thank you all so much for joining me live tonight. Tonight's show is an important topic, to say the least, and it's honestly a difficult subject to be diving into. It's sad. It's one of the saddest things that I've seen in a long time, and I'm looking at a lot of this stuff all the time, and when we were talking about the hurricane that moved through and the absolute devastation it's caused, and not just the devastation that's sad and the death and the loss of life and the loss of property and the destroyed communities, but the response from our government and the bigger picture of what's going on, which is disturbing to say the least. And so tonight's show is going to be a walkthrough of the research that I've done and understanding, okay, what's the situation right now, kind of centering around Asheville, North Carolina, and the surrounding regions, but then looking at what's the government's reaction, what's happening with all the volunteers trying to help, how does this relate to the lithium mines? How does it relate to weather control? I mean, tonight's whole show is just going to be on what's happening down there because it's that important. And my concern, which I'll kind of go through in today's show, is that what we're seeing is a Maui Fire 2.0, a Paradise, California 2.0, East Palestine, Ohio 2.0. I'm concerned that what we're seeing is a pattern here, and we're going to be looking at that specifically, though, in today's show. So before we jump in, thanks for all of you that are watching tonight live. Thank you for joining us on Rumble, the platform of free speech. Make sure that you're hitting that green follow button. And I also invite you to click the red button to join the locals community as well. We've got a lot going on there. Also, before we do jump in, just a quick few notes. One thing just to consider in terms of where we're at right now is just the safety of the things that matter to us, such as your savings. And so a serious question for you is, are your savings safe? So with every passing day, the value of the dollar erodes, weakened by overprinting and rampant inflation. And now, as the BRICS nations accelerate their de-dollarization plan to collapse the dollar, the risk only grows. Imagine waking up one morning to find your hard-earned savings worth only a fraction of what they were. It's happening faster than you think. But you have a choice, a simple shift. One decision can protect your wealth from collapse. Moving even a small portion of your savings into gold and silver could be the key to securing your future. Gold and silver have stood the test of time. They're not just metals, they're safe havens, impervious to the whims of inflation and economic turmoil. So while the dollar loses value, gold and silver are standing very strong. So folks, the time to act is now. Before the dollar weakens further, safeguard your savings with noble gold. Imagine the peace of mind knowing that your wealth is protected, that you're going to have assets to pass on to your children. It's simple, it's safe, and it's something you can do today. So folks, move some of your savings from the vulnerable IRAs and 401ks into the enduring strength of gold and silver. Because when the dollar fails, you're going to be glad that you did. And there's no better company to work with than Noble Gold. So protect your future. Act now. Call 626-654-1906 or visit goldwithseth.com to get your free gold and silver investment guide. Again, that's 626-654-1906 or goldwithseth.com. It's also worth mentioning is as we're diving into what's happening in this disaster zone, one of the common things I'm seeing and people talking about what it's like down there is that credit cards are useless. The only thing that matters is cash and any kind of valuables and commodities like precious metals. You can't go to your local ATM machine and get some money out. So the people that are able to, survive down there and be able to barter are those that have already thought through this. And this is why, prepping is such a big deal to me and being prepared for stuff like this, because here we have a real world example of what happens when the proverbial crap hits the fan. So let's go ahead and I want to dive into just first assessing the situation down there. So this is a report that came out that just takes it, just looks at what is on the ground right now, what's happening. So this guy, Bill Stebbins, on Twitter, it said, a comrade in arms of mine and fellow OIF, which I believe is Operation Iraqi Freedom, right? So this guy was an Iraqi vet. came up on the net, and thanks to Starlink and Elon Musk was able to let me know he and his family are arrived, but things are getting really bad really quick. Here's a here's a fellow multiple tour Iraq vet, and he's a fellow multiple tour Iraq vet and not prone to exaggeration. So he's in North Carolina, and here's his first update. So, folks, before I read this, this is really helpful in just understanding what life is like on the ground there. And throughout researching for this show, this is something I've been reflecting on as I'm sitting in my comfortable home with my kids running around and a fridge full of food and water. I pull the lever up for my water in the kitchen sink. I've been reflecting on, like, gosh, like I can't imagine losing all this. I can't imagine waking up to a storm and having my entire home taken away, or my family. So what this guy does, though, is he really helps you understand what it's like in these zones, because unfortunately what happens when there's a disaster, there's all the media attention on the disaster and maybe a little bit of the rescue efforts, but then it kind of fizzles out. But when you listen to this, it's like, holy smokes, what's going on down there is serious. So let me go ahead and read. He says the entire area is a war zone. Even if not directly destroyed by floodwaters, there are men, women, and children starving, without water and sanitation, no fuel. People can't get to any distribution points because they have no fuel. People are walking on foot and dragging wagons. The majority of federal and state assets are being diverted to the incorporated areas of Asheville, Black Mountain, etc., and without a deliberate effort yet into the rural, unincorporated areas. People are suffering, and communities are rapidly moving to isolation and self-defense and policing. There are bodies floating down the rivers. There are bodies stuck in the tops of trees. Linemen entering destroyed areas are finding dozens of children as young as 3 walking through the mud near naked, crying for their parents, some with ropes still tied on their arms, attached to broken lumber where clearly their dead parents had last-ditch tied them to something. I've got a 4-year-old and a 7-month-old. I cannot imagine going through a situation where I'm a parent and I'm tying my kid to a tree in hopes that they survive. So this guy's literally saying they're finding children with ropes tied to them, with trees, limbs attached, which was a last-ditch effort for parents to save their kids. I just can't imagine this. Continuing, was talking to a lineman yesterday, and now he's finding heads and limbs every time debris is removed. So a lineman is, as far as I understand, someone who's reestablishing electricity, right? A lineman, the telephone pole lineman. Okay, so entire communities are just gone, gone, nothing to repair. And in some of the areas, just no one even to help anyone, just bodies with a stench increasing by the day. The death count will be in the thousands. Desperation is increasing, and most vets are lying on their roofs with rifles. Local rural gas stations, markets, etc., have clear militia forming with men in hodgepodge gear and rifles patrolling. We are self-policing now. So this is what's going on down there. This is the most accurate thing that I've read in my research of describing what's happening. Now, obviously, it's written by a former Iraqi soldier, right? Someone who did multiple tours, right? He's an Iraqi veteran. So that's why it's very descriptive. This guy's been to war zones before. So when he describes this, he knows what he's talking about. This is how serious it is. Now, I've got a few more things. I have a couple videos to show you, just of some interviews with people down there, because it's important that we understand what life is like for these people down there and see. So here's a video. This is a woman from Western North Carolina recounting what she's seen down there. So I'm going to play her video. It's about 3 minutes long. So I'm going to hit play here for you. And I will warn you, I'm not going to show you anything graphic in this entire show, but I will show you things that might make you upset and angry and sad. And that's the human existence, right? That's the human condition. All right, so I'll play this for you, this woman.
Hey y'all. So I'm safe in my house. Our power came on. I have water and I'm so blessed. But the reports that are coming out of these towns in western North Carolina are horrific. The news is not even coming close to catching the true devastation. Um, there are bodies that are floating down the river, babies. And if this is not a wake-up call that our government is not for us, then I don't know what is. They're everyday citizens who are taking it upon themselves to go and deliver items and things to these people. Anyway, pray for Western North Carolina. Don't believe everything that you're hearing on the news, because they're not. One of my friends in Canada had heard that there were like 200 people missing and maybe 40 dead. Y'all, so much more than that. At the local hospital in Asheville, there are over 900 unidentified bodies. And that was just from 2 days ago. So I'm sure there are more, but there are. People are floating down the river. And if you're able and you can donate or you can get it in the hands of a real person, there were like, I think, 10 different truck drivers who were trying to deliver goods, and they all stopped on the way up there, and every single tire was slashed. And so it's going to be up to us. We cannot count on Uncle Sam. It's going to be neighbor helping neighbor. And I don't care how old or young you are. If you can't get out there or you can't donate, you can pray. Because the devastation is nothing like I have ever seen. And I think this is going to go down probably as one of the worst storms in American history. I just cannot fathom the pain and the destruction and the stuff that these people are going through. So anyway, just remember Western North Carolina, and listen to the people who are on the ground, not the news, because they don't know. Anyway, y'all have a good day.
Gosh, what's crazy is how she's talking about how the news is just completely underreporting what's happening, and listening, like the key to listening to people on the ground. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing right here, is that I'm just a citizen journalist. That's all that I am. And I'm just trying my best to pull together as much information as I have to help you understand what's happening there, because so many Americans, and not just Americans, people around the world, are just used to sitting down on the couch and turning on, Fox News or CNN, MSNBC, and thinking they know what's happening in the world. But it's just not the case. It's just not the case at all. So it's like coming to America and visiting one state and saying, okay, yeah, I've seen America. It's like, well, hold on now. No, you haven't. And actually, it's worse because the news is deliberately lying. They're not just only showing you a slice. Is what they show you is oftentimes completely false or misleading, or they're hiding something else. But I'm going to continue. So this is an interview that's a little more of a tearjerker, unfortunately. Anyway, it's a minute 19 long. I'm just going to play it for you. It'll make sense to you as I'm playing it. So check this one out. Another victim talking about what's happened.
I'm so proud of my son, because in his last moments, he wasn't screaming for me. He was screaming, Jesus, Jesus, save me. Jesus, I hear you. Jesus, I'm calling upon you. And his wildest dreams and everything that he wanted to be was a superhero. And that was his goal in life. And instead, he's my hero, because he reached for something past flesh, past human, past anything that even grown adults, I think, would reach for. My son called out to the one God Almighty. And I think at that moment he was rescued and he became my hero. And I think all of them carried me through that moment. I think that his biggest dreams, he was the smartest, bravest, hopeful, great friend, great son. I couldn't have asked for a better son. And he was so happy up until the very end when he was screaming for Jesus. And in that moment, I think he found joy.
You know, the innocence of children is actually quite spectacular. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it is. Marissa being a mother too, Megan and Heather, I do, amidst the tragedy, your parents as well. Jesse.
So I saw some pictures of this situation. So what happened was it looked like that this boy, I think he was 11 years old. Let me check the notes here. No, he was 7. So he says it so that he was sitting on the roof of their home in Asheville when he and his grandparents were swept away by the raging flood. So I don't know any more details beyond that. I saw some pictures of him with his grandfather, with his grandparents, and that this is just one of so many stories, unfortunately, and these are just the ones that are getting out. And I'm sure you if you've been paying attention, you're seeing the videos of the devastation. I mean, it's mud floods. It's entire towns buried. I mean, some of the videos I've been seeing of the water, it's, carrying massive buildings, huge structures. The water just carrying. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. But what's also incredible in the wrong way is how the government's responding to this. So here's the announcement from Kamala. Okay, so here's the aid package. So let's listen to this. 12 seconds.
And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met. And the federal relief and assistance that we have been providing has included FEMA providing $750 for folks who need immediate needs being met.
So FEMA is providing $750 to the folks that need it. And I'm also seeing on the internet that people are trying to apply for it and they're being denied. So this is like, honestly, of everything, this is the thing that boils my blood. And actually, to be honest, it has me convinced that it's intentional. I think that there is an intentional demoralization happening right now in our country of the American people, that they are intentionally, they're not trying to hide it, right? Because in the past, what would happen is that you'd have a corrupt government and they're always hiding it. They're always saying they're doing these good things, but they're hiding what they're really doing. I really believe that we're at the Yuri Bezmenov stage of the demoralization, that we're at the stage of the bad actors in our country, the deep state, the cabal, whatever you want to call it, that they're actually trying to make Americans demoralized. They're trying to make us angry. They're trying to make us scared. They're trying to make us confused. They're trying to make us they're trying to push us to the edge. And this is something that I'll get into a little later in the show. But when you take a step back from this, people are asking, well, why isn't the government helping? It's the wrong question to ask, because the answer is already there. The government, not all of the people in the government, but if you look at what's happening, it's very clear to me that a large chunk of our government, or what's controlling our government, wants to kill the American people. They want to get rid of us. It's the only way that I can make sense of it. If you look at what's happening with these rescue operations, which I'll be getting into next, it's absolutely insane that they're going to put all the money into bringing the immigrants into the country. And yet, people that might have just lost their entire home and lost their savings, maybe they lost some of their children, their pets, their land, they're getting $750. Like, what's that gonna do? Maybe it gets you 3 nights in a hotel. It's mind blowing. Actually, and here you go. Here's a I think it's a New York Post article for you. So the feds say there's no money left to respond to hurricanes after FEMA spent $1.4 billion on migrants. Okay, so I'll play a short video for you. There's an ad that's got to load first. So this is literally, the feds say there's no more money left to respond to the hurricane after they spent $1.4 billion. I think it's maybe in the past, say calendar year or whatever. But so here you go. Here, I'll turn this up a little bit. This is a 30-second clip for you.
Alejandro Mayorkas sounding the alarm on FEMA funding right after the devastation of Hurricane Helene. Listen.
We are meeting the immediate needs with the money that we have. We are expecting another hurricane hitting. We do not have the funds. FEMA does not have the funds to make it through the season.
This all comes as the Biden-Harris administration spent over $1 billion from a FEMA program on services for migrants.
We're not going to watch Bigfoot.
If you get sick with COVID-19.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, great. So there you go. They've spent over $1 billion from the FEMA coffers, mind you, not from other programs. They've taken money out of the FEMA budget to spend over $1 billion on bringing in illegals to destroy the country, right? Like that's what's happening. And they have no money. Sorry, sorry, Americans been paying taxes your whole life. We've been raping and pillaging you through taxes and income tax and inflation. And sorry, we've already spent all of our money on the illegals coming in. So here's a cool $750 for you. Take care of yourself. Buy your kid a new toy. Like it's mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing. Here's a tweet. This is from Joshua Reed. Hurricane victims versus illegal immigrants. Hurricane victims. FEMA turning away volunteers and rescuers. FEMA confiscating resources from volunteers and charities. Victims will get $750 from FEMA relief. Government will provide an additional support up to $31,000 per household, but it will take up to a year to approve. Illegal immigrants. $10,000 EBT card for food. Free cell phone and service. Free flights anywhere in the U.S. $2,500 a month for housing. Frontline and instant approval on government services, driver's license, medical, free medical care. He says this is treason. I agree. I agree. Our government is no longer by the people and for the people. It is grown into this amalgamation, this deep state apparatus that is now actively trying to dismantle the United States of America. Like that's the only way you can make sense of this. It's the only way you can make sense of it is that the people that are running this country, and actually it's not the politicians, right? Honestly, like it's, if you think it's Kamala Harris, you think she's making these decisions? No way. You think Mayorkas? You think he's the one making these decisions? No way. None of them are making decisions. They are literally just puppets. They are in the positions of power they have because they are able to be controlled. People that are not able to be controlled are not allowed to get into positions of significant power in the United States. Why do they hate Donald Trump so much? Because he was rich and he has power and influence and they don't control him for the most part, which is a different story. But this is what's happening. Look at what's happening with all the Diddy stuff, the P. Diddy stuff, the Epstein, like it's all about control. So if you want to make sense of this, the only way to make sense of it is to understand and come to the conclusion that the vast majority of the elected officials, the people that run this country, CEOs of major corporations, etc., through bribery or blackmail, are actually being controlled by hostile enemies of the United States. So when you look around and you look at the country and say, gosh, why does the country feel like it's going to hell? Because it is. Because it's actively being destroyed by people that want to destroy America and they want to bring about a one world government. It's actually pretty simple, and where's my tinfoil hat, right? It's like, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, we're going to be getting into weather modification. I'm going to show you the actual patents they have to create and control hurricanes. Right. So this is something that goes deep into a much bigger agenda, but it's just absolutely insane. OK, and it's like, OK, well, they've given this much to migrants. Well, how much money has gone to Ukraine? Right. Our own American people, our veterans are starving on the streets and killing themselves in record numbers because they're not being taken care of. Yet we're giving, okay, here's a good chart for you. So far this year, the United States has given $24 billion to Ukraine, $11 billion to Israel, almost $2 billion to Ethiopia, $1.6 billion to Jordan, $1.4 billion to Egypt, $1.1 billion to Afghanistan, $1.1 billion to Somalia, $1 billion to Yemen, $1 billion to Congo, $1 billion to Syria, and approximately $9,000 per illegal immigrant that has entered the U.S. And Americans who have lost everything to Hurricane Helene will be given $750. Help me make sense of this, because I can't make sense of it in any rational way except coming to the conclusion that this is an absolutely coordinated attack to collapse our country and to seize land, which we're going to be getting into. Okay. So getting into this, it's like, okay, what, not only are they've already blown all their money on the illegals, but here we go. This is Dr. Ben Braddock saying, I was able to independently confirm with a high-ranking FEMA official that Governor Cooper of North Carolina is impeding the deployment of military aid, right? So he's asking his source, can you confirm or deny this is accurate? Asking him about this. Yes, that is true. As of today, the DOD has requested for Title X's dual status command, and it has not been approved by the state of North Carolina. Approximately 5,000 National Guard troops from over 10 states are on the ground from Florida to North Carolina, augmenting search and rescue operations. DOD said they were standing by to fulfill any gaps. No movement on that. Also, Fort Campbell stands ready with high water vehicles and aerial assets. So there's been a stand down on this. And I'm not saying that there's no, I'm getting some reports of, I think, Red Cross doing some things. I think FEMA set some porta potties up outside of a hospital. I heard that, right? So there you go. FEMA, they're doing what they can with whatever money they've saved over. They hadn't given to all the illegals. So yeah, this is it. Like the government is not only not helping, but they're actually blocking the help. They're preventing the help from happening. Okay, let's continue with this. Here you go. Here's a guy, Alan Mashburn, who I think was in politics in North Carolina, said was just informed by a person in the water service industry that a supply company willing to donate pipes for repairs to expedite city and county water being restored was told no by federal agencies. Now, he's assuming it was FEMA. So here's a water service industry, right? A person in this, that's a supply company is saying, look, we can donate pipes for repairs to expedite getting water back restored, which is so massive. Getting water and electricity back in a disaster area is so critical. And the guy was told no. So he's saying, here he continues, it's not just the damage and fatalities that we're facing. We are literally fighting the feds for survival in Western North Carolina. Sure would be nice if we had a governor that would fight for the citizens instead of only showing up for photo ops. Crazy. Absolutely crazy. Now, don't worry, though. It continues, right? So here is Mr. Pete Buttigieg. They have just put out a message. I'll play it for you. 23 seconds. Listen to this one.
Our goal is to make sure that funding is no obstacle to very quickly getting people the relief that they need and deserve. There's also some safety issues that come up. For example, temporary flight restrictions to make sure that the airspace is clear for any flights or drone activity that might be involved in helping to allow those emergency responders to do their job. Our goal is to make sure that.
So what they've done, this is the official from the U.S. DOT, Department of Transportation. Drone pilots, do not fly your drones near or around rescue and recovery efforts for Hurricane Helene. Interfering with the emergency response operations impacts search and rescue operations on the ground. For more information, blah, blah, blah. So, I've seen so many videos come out of people using drones to find people. Right, so they're using drones to locate folks, and it's probably the best thing, right? It's way better than a helicopter, actually, because you can go in all kinds of areas, and you're not worried about killing yourself if you get in an accident. So people are using drones to locate people that are still stranded, but they're also using drones to deliver critical supplies. Like I've seen people have these massive drones that they're dropping off insulin, right? So for people that don't have refrigeration and their insulin is going bad. They're dropping off insulin. They're dropping off baby formula. So here you have them, and these are all citizens. So here you have the U.S. DOT coming out and saying, do not fly any drones because it's going to interfere with our rescue operations. I mean, what a slap in the face. What a slap in the face. And it continues. So here's a guy that I'm going to play a little bit of this news, kind of story for you, that this is a pilot that was using his own chopper and his own money, he and his son, so his son is his co-pilot, to rescue people, and he's threatened to be placed in jail. Okay, listen to this. And sorry if I'm getting a little worked up tonight. I'm usually more calm and kind of calm, but this stuff just really, like, these are our American people. These are my people. Like, I'm an American. I'm a proud American. My show's literally called Man in America. And these are my people. So check this out. Watch this. It's 6 minutes. I'm going to fast forward a little bit in the middle, just because, just to help kind of, anyway.
Days after Helene wreaked havoc in North Carolina. But one Pageland man's efforts to help are now the source of controversy. He flew his own chopper on his own dime to help stranded victims. But that man says he abandoned his rescue missions after a fire official threatened to have him thrown in jail. Well, that man now wants answers and turned to Queen City News Chief Investigator Jody Barr to help figure out what went wrong here.
So basically, I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So this guy has his own chopper. He and his son, who's his co-pilot, are going and doing rescue operations. So in one of these operations, they find an elderly couple stranded on a road. They land, and he takes the woman first, take her back to safety, and he leaves. I think he doesn't want to overload his chopper, and then he leaves his son there with the woman's husband. Okay, so I'll continue the story, I think, at a place where he's going to explain what's happened here.
Back up the mountain, you're going to be arrested. I said, well, sir, I'm going back to get them back with the other victim. And in the middle of the whole conversation and then blocking the road off, I was greeted by the, at that time I didn't know, but Lake Lure fire chief or assistant chief maybe, and he shut down the whole operation. So at that point, I felt like the conversation wasn't going any further. And again, he asked me to leave, and I said, hey, I have no problem getting out of your area. If that's what you want us to do, we'll leave, no issue. At that point, I asked him, what was the reason I had to leave them there? And he said, again, you're interfering with my operation. I just need you to get out of the area. I said, sir, I don't know where you were trained at, but I know how my training is, and I'm not going to leave personnel behind. I'm going back to get my co-pilot. He said, if you turn around and go back up the mountain, you're going to be arrested. I said, well, sir, I'm going back to get my co-pilot. I don't know what to tell you. And he said, I'm letting you know. And at that point, he waved for 2 law enforcement officers to come over and told me that again, if I go back up the mountain, I would be arrested.
He flew the 3-minute trip back, picked up his son, and left the woman's husband behind.
Sure.
So this is insane. He, as I told you, what he did is he found this couple, older couple. He first he dropped off. He just landed there. He took his son. His son is his co-pilot, and his son waited with the woman's husband. And the woman got into his helicopter, and he took her to safety. Now, when he dropped her off, he's alone. He ran into this fire warden or this fire chief, who literally told him, "Stop what you're doing, or we're going to arrest you." He said, "Look, my son, my co-pilot, is 3 minutes up that way. I left him stranded on an abandoned piece of road with this woman's husband." He goes, "I'm going to go pick up." And the guys and the fire chief said, "We brought over 2 officers. We're going to arrest you if you go back there." And so the guy, he still did, and good for him. He still went and picked up his son, but he had to leave the woman's husband sitting there. He was stranded. I mean, who knows how distressed he was? And now his wife is who knows where. She's back to safety. But the fact that the fire chief told him that he was going to arrest him if he went back 3 minutes away to go pick up his son, who he left there. I mean, he's paying for his own gas. I'm sure that chopper wasn't cheap. I mean, this is mind-blowing. But what's interesting, though, is that fire chief he's talking about, these are the people that allow tyranny to take hold in a country. It's the people that will take orders against their own conscience, or it's the people that take orders that have no conscience. And it's one of those things, people that just say, you know what, here's an opportunity for me to be powerful and make some decisions, and this is it. So this is how tyranny seeps in. And that's just part of it, okay? So here, We've also got these tales of these truckers. So check this out. This is a trucker talking about describing what's happening. So all these big truckers are, there's these big convoys of truckers that are taking donations from around the country and driving their donations into these disaster hit areas. They're not part of FEMA. They're just American patriots. They're people that care about their country, that care about their neighbors and care about the people that are suffering. And so I'll play this for you. Actually, before I play it, though, I have a task for you. Share this show. And I'm serious. I don't say it, this aggressively that often, but this information needs to get out. This information needs to reach more people. And unfortunately, I'm shadow banned so bad on a lot of major social media sites. So it's really hard for videos like this to go viral. So it really takes everyone sharing the content. And so this is critical information that we need to get out. So if you're watching and you're still sticking with me after a half an hour or 37 minutes into the show, whether you do it now or after the show, make sure you share this show, because we need to have more Americans understand what's happening. And this isn't about partisanship. This isn't about left versus right. In my opinion, this is a topic that unites the country. Americans, as divided as we are, we're human beings and we have souls. And when we see others suffering, especially Americans, we want to help other people. That's who we are as Americans. Like, we welcome people to come into our country properly. Like, we will take our shirt off our back to our neighbor. This is America. And the people that we're talking about here, it's the people trying to help that are being stopped. And it's our own fellow Americans that are sitting down there right now with literally right now, right now, close your eyes and imagine all the people sitting in darkness right now with no internet, with no water, with no food, with their hungry kids screaming, with their babies that don't have formula. Right now, they're sitting in America. They're sitting and they're waiting and they're hoping that the government or someone else will come do something for them. So this is why we need to get this information out. We need to take videos like this, not just my video, but anything you come across like this, we need to share it and let more people know what's happening. So what's happening with these truckers? There's all these truckers that are on the highway. What they're finding, though, is there's certain gas stops that they're coming out to their trucks. All their tires have holes poked in them, very strategic holes. So what's happening is the trucker, and they're being looted. So these truckers are trying to bring more supplies to people, food, water, medicine, diapers, whatever it is, blankets to keep warm. They're being sabotaged. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. So check this out, 42-second right here.
TA in Denmark, Tennessee had 50 trucks with slashed tires. 50 trucks with slashed tires. That's on I-40 through Tennessee. Exit 126 in Holiday, Tennessee. The Loves had 5 trucks. One guy had 9 tires slashed. And exit 163 at the Loves in Dixon, Tennessee, there were 16 trucks with tires slashed.
So for those that have a hard time hearing this, because he has a lot of background audio, what he's saying is there's 50 trucks in the Denmark stop at the TNA location, which is a truck stop. 50 trucks have had their tires slashed at that location. 5 in the Loves and the Holiday stop, and 16 in the Loves Dixon stop. So this is what's happening. So these are trucks. So this is coordinated, right? This is coordinated. I've seen some other information coming out that it seemed like it was potentially looked like it was illegals or immigrants that were doing it. There were some arrest photos I saw for people involved with this. There's also articles I can find. This isn't some random guy on TikTok that's creating fake news. There's actual you can go to news websites and find that there's reports on this, that the sheriff and the police are doing reports on this, saying that these trucks are being sabotaged. It's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Now, here's a post. I'm going to read this for you in 1 second here. It's a little bit longer of a post, because if you ask yourself, it's like, okay, well, why is it that FEMA, as an example, there's been so many stories coming out of people that have huge warehouses that they've amassed of food to give out to people, and FEMA is seizing that food supply, and they're moving it to warehouses, but actually a lot of what they're seizing may not even be used in this. So you ask yourself, well, why? Like, what's their goal? Is it to help the people? Well, so here's a long post that's gone very viral on Twitter that helps you understand what's really going on. Okay, so here's this guy named Ryan Tyre who says, if you're wondering why citizens are being turned away, that are coming to help North Carolina and Tennessee, you'll want to hear my experience as someone who has been doing this as a private citizen for almost a decade. I was able to get into and out of Asheville. We brought food, water, fuel, and other supplies, as well as help people affected by the floods. But there are reasons why they're not allowing outside help. I cannot confirm the reasons why in North Carolina, but I can tell you the reasons in other storms I've worked. I'll explain below. Let me share with you the first disaster area that I finally realized that this was all about money. In the Florida Keys with Hurricane Irma, after Texas got hit with Harvey, we finished our efforts in Texas and were the first citizen team to make it to Key Largo. The federal agencies had US 1 shut down just south of Key Largo, and they wouldn't let anyone in or out, even though the road was okay to pass. We explained to them that we had boats, jet skis, food, water, chainsaws, and fuel to bring to these people. They didn't care and wouldn't let us in. It was night by that point, and you rarely saw the lights of vehicles in the distance on the individual keys, meaning the emergency response teams from FEMA weren't even working. It was all quiet. We decided we'd go in anyways. We filled up the boats and jet skis with all that we could reasonably carry and went by water around all their blockades and around their law enforcement presence on the water. It was 87 miles by water to get to our first stop, Cudjoe Key and Sugarloaf Key. When we arrived there, we were greeted by a homeowner who was elated to see us and all the supplies we brought. His house was in shambles. We started offloading supplies on the shoreline and helped him get into what was left of his house. During that process, he explained to us that FEMA had set up a command center at a local high school on the island, but they weren't doing anything to help the residents, not even bringing them water. Instead, he explained they were driving around using a loudspeaker, telling people to stay in their homes. They weren't even helping the homeowners with supplies. I was skeptical at first while he was telling me all this, but then he said something that broke my heart. He told us that the people of the Keys were all in despair because they had just seen weeks before the overwhelming support for Texas with Hurricane Harvey by the citizens of this country. He and his neighbors on all of the Keys felt like Americans had forgotten about them completely because at this point, 5 days after landfall, all they had seen was FEMA and they were no help. The residents were cut off from the outside world, no cellular, no internet, no way to contact anyone or hear of any efforts to try to help them. The only communication they had was from a local radio station on Sugarloaf Key that was broadcasting on AM to the surrounding keys. The man, after hearing that there were citizens trying to bring them help, but being refused entry by federal law enforcement, was visibly upset. He and his neighbors really thought the country had abandoned them. He insisted that we get into his waterlogged truck and he would take us to the radio station so we could go on live on air to tell the citizens trapped in the Keys that we, the American people, were there to help and that the government was trying to stop our efforts. That's exactly what we did. After that, we were determined to help as many people as we could, but we were met with red tape throughout the whole process and the time we were in the Keys. We finally were able to talk to some authorities to let us down to the Ferro Blanca Resort and Marathon towards the end of the Boot Key. This was the same hotel where state and local authorities were staging their personnel, and they were happy to see us. I was able to coordinate several trucks full of supplies to be brought down to the EOC and Marathon. I was privy to the EOC meeting, but was informed in that meeting that all the semi-trucks full of food, water, and hygiene supplies were to be turned around and not allowed to be offloaded for distribution by the EOC. The reason they gave us was that these donations were not from companies on their preferred vendors list, and that they would not accept them or give them to the residents of the Keys impacted by the storm. It was at that point that I realized it's all about money. These preferred vendors are getting part of the money being released by the state and the federal government for each disaster. In turn, some of the vendors make it on the list because a friend gets them on the list, and in return for getting ridiculously outlandish amounts of compensation for the services they render, they give kickbacks. So accepting outside donations, even though they are on location and can help people now, they would rather let people suffer so they can get their kickbacks. This meeting solidified my resolve to help these people regardless of what the greedy officials wanted, and we're going to feed the lower Keys that were being neglected. So he continues on with this, but here's some pictures that he has of the operations what they were doing. But isn't that insane that they're literally turning away food and water and products for the people that need them because they want to make sure that the preferred vendors, the people who have the big government contracts, right? The big corporations and whatever it is, whatever kind of phony capitalism there is, that they're the ones that they get the access, right? They're the ones that get to sell and get the big government payout. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. So let me see. Okay, now we're going to be getting into the other part of this whole story, which is land grabs and weather weapons. Now, this is something that gets into, to me, this is where it turns dark. Okay, you could say that, okay, say it's a corrupt government, they're after money, they're bloated, right? Whatever you want to consider it. They've spent all their money on immigrants. They can't help the people. They're turning away help. Those are all criminal. Those are all terrible things. But when you start looking at the lithium mines and you start looking at weather modification, and I'm going to show you, right? You might say I'm a conspiracy theorist, right? If I was to sit here and tell you and say, look, the government has the technology to create and control storm systems. The government can use weather as a weapon. Most people, even say 5 years ago, would say, dude, you're a nut job. Is that tinfoil on your head? What is it? But I'm literally going to show you the patents. So if you're on the edge, if you're like, you know what, Seth, like I agree with everything so far, but now you're getting into this stuff that's a little more conspiratorial and it's a little far-fetched. Like I came with the receipts. I'm going to show you the actual PDFs of the operations that they did, of the specific declassified information. So it's going to get juicy. But before we jump in, it is worth mentioning one other show sponsor, and it's an important time to talk about it, is survival food. Right. So I've specifically chosen, the sponsors that I work with that help me maintain being independent. Right. This is why I'm showing you this stuff. Is it like, okay, what's on Seth's agenda? Whatever Seth thinks is important. No one's telling me what I can and cannot say. Right. So that's why when I'm choosing a sponsor, it's people that I actually truly believe in. If you know me, if you watch my shows enough, I'm a big person that's into preparedness. I'm writing a book on prepping. Right. And this is, I'll give you more details about it as it unfolds, but I'm going to do like a 4 or 5 part series on prepping that has a book that you can download for free. That's going to be all about that. So make sure you're following me to tune in because this is really important to me. And this is why. So one thing I'd have to ask you is make sure that you have enough food. Right. And this is something you should do. Like there's all kinds of calculators online. You can say, okay, a food storage calculator for preparedness. And it'll tell you, okay, how much food you need for how long, et cetera. But my recommendation is to have at least a month of food and water for every person in your household. Now, and we're talking about, water, at least a gallon per day, right? And that's a minimum. So if you've got 5 people in your family and you want to have, 5 days worth of water, that's 25 gallons of water that should be stored, right? And that will give you just enough for sanitation, hydration, et cetera. But when it comes to storable food, though, you have to ask yourself, okay, this is an important question. If today disaster struck, whether it's an EMP or any number of things, some sort of weather weapon, massive tornadoes comes through, if today you could no longer go to the grocery store, how long would your family last? It's an important question. Like we should be thinking about this right now more than ever, right? Because do you want to be one of the people that's waiting for FEMA? Like, I'm serious. Like, if you're the head of your household or you're the one watching this show, do you really want to be waiting for FEMA to give you food to feed your kids? Like, and who knows what kind of crap they're going to give you anyway. It's like, oh, here's some infant formula. It's like, you look at the back of it. It's like, this is high fructose corn syrup, this formula you gave me. No, not at all. So this is why food preparedness is really, really important. Now, in the book and in the series I'll be doing, I'm going to be going deep into the different ways of storing food, all kinds of stuff. But what I can tell you is that the food buckets, the companies that make the food buckets are a great option for something that's quick and easy. Now, I'll warn you, though, there's a lot of food bucket companies, though, that what they do, a lot of the big names you're probably familiar with, they shove a bunch of crap in their food buckets, like Kool-Aid and pudding and stuff that make it so, it's the cheapest per calorie, right? That's not what you should be getting. This is why the company that I recommend personally, this is like, of all of my storable food that is in this category of kind of pre-bought storable food, it's all Heaven's Harvest, right? So Heaven's Harvest, I know the husband and wife, they're great Christian patriots out of Georgia. It's incredibly high quality food. They stand by what they sell you. You can get organic, you can get seeds. So if you don't have at least a month, and honestly, my personal recommendation, obviously it comes down to budget, is 3 to 6 months worth of food per person in your family. You don't want to say, look, well, if things are bad for a week, we'll be okay. What if it's 2 weeks? What if it's a month? What if it's 3 months? Right? So again, that's why I recommend having it personally 3 to 6 months for every person in your family worth of food. So it's heavensharvest.com. They've got a great stuff, survival kits, they have the food buckets, they've got seeds, they've got water storage, water filtration. If you want to get some water bricks here for storing water. And the great thing is use promo code Seth, SETH, you get 15% off your entire order. It's the highest discount you're going to find for Heaven's Harvest. Okay. So 15% off, use promo code Seth. It's worth mentioning. Okay. So jumping into the next part of today's discussion, let me pull up here where I'm at on my list. Okay, so we are getting into the juicy stuff. Okay, so the idea of land grabs. Okay, so here is a tweet I'm going to read you. So this is from Chris Martinson, PhD. I found him to be quite reputable. I've been following him. He had some of the best reporting on the original Butler Trump assassination attempt. This is a guy that was making the videos breaking down the audio signatures of the guns being fired. He's a guy that his information showed us that there was actually 4 or 5 or 6 different weapons used during the assassination attempt. So this is from him. I trust him. So he says, this needs to go far and wide to put pressure on the government to do the right thing and save lives. This evening, from a Peak Prosperity member to me via private message at my site, he says, they tell him, I can't post this online because it's not quite public yet, but government officials had a town meeting with all the residents of Chimney Rock and basically told them the town was being bulldozed, bodies and all, and the land was being seized by the federal government, and they would not be able to move back, and basically their homes the ones that were standing were no longer theirs, and the federal government owned it all. I don't know what crazy play for land this is, but there's a lot of conspiracy about lithium mines. And let me just tell you, as someone who lives in Charlotte and has friends who live in the area of Western North Carolina, they are not being helped. And this is actually being a stand down operation by the federal government. Now, Chris responds and said, what the heck? That's quite disturbing. Is this firsthand, secondhand, or more distant info? Okay, the guy continues. Our friend owns an Airbnb in Chimney Rock. They had a town meeting yesterday, and someone from the federal government told them all those things in the town meeting, but doesn't want the information getting out. Also, they are not picking up the bodies. The stench of the bodies everywhere is insane, and for some reason, the government does not want to pick up the bodies. One pastor of a local church was going to door delivering water, and they changed their delivery request to body bags because so many of the homes that they've gone to have needed body bags. We're trying to keep the body count. They're not picking up the bodies. They don't want to identify the bodies, and they're just leaving them to rot in the streets. So Kristen responds and says, I can't even. I'm stunned. This is beyond anything I could have imagined even very recently. You always pick up and bury the dead. It's what humans do. They are violating every possible custom on purpose. Thank you for keeping me informed. People need to know about this. Let me know when you'd be comfortable with me posting to our forums in an anonymized fashion, of course. Person responds and says, you can post the message. It needs to get out. Something evil is going on in the North Carolina mountains. I just didn't want to be identified. Just today, we put up a trailer for a shelter in Hendersonville, North Carolina that had no food for tons of moms and babies. All the stores around are empty or locked. In Chandler, North Carolina, 2,000 people haven't eaten anything or drank in 6 days and just got an SOS message out for help. I'm trying to tag the Cajun Navy in Operation Airdrop, but people are dying by the minute. Multiple truckers have reported their tires have being slashed. Our friends from Chimney Rock have said that they heard multiple stories of people being robbed at gunpoint making supply runs. 2 people that drove down to Charlotte yesterday, and today one that we helped, said the bodies in the trees, all over the ditches and major roads back. Something weird is going on here in North Carolina. The guy continues, says, someone with a large national megaphone needs to amplify how bad it is. People are now starting to die trapped. My town is Operation Airdrop, North Carolina Central Command. They need pilots with planes, and they're asking just for trucks. People with big equipment are needed, but more than anything, the nation needs to put pressure on Washington to deploy the National Guard ASAP. The 82nd was begging to go since Saturday, but have been told to stand down. Every effing Apache we have should be flying rescue missions. Please amplify this message. I mean, this is hard. It's hard. It's hard to read this. It's so upsetting. It's so upsetting. And so you look at this and, okay, you say, well, so the DOD and the DHS and our own government, they're not, it's not that they're actively just not doing anything. They're getting in the way. They're ordering stand down to the people that should be able to help. Now, what's crazy though, in this area, I'm sure you've heard about the lithium mines, right? So it makes sense. Okay. People, especially, look, Asheville was a beautiful city. It's the kind of place you go retire to. It's the kind of place you go live and you've made it. Right? You don't want to sell your home for money because some big mining operation is going to be coming in. And if you look at, there's been a lot of news stories about, because there's a lot of quartz and lithium, which are key components, like we're talking like multi-billion dollar industries. There's huge deposits under this region and people have refused to leave. So there's been a lot of contention over this. Well, check this out. Here we go. Lo and behold, the DOD, so this is from September 12th. Okay, keep in mind the timing of this. This is September 12th. This is about 2 weeks before the hurricane came through. So the DOD enters an agreement to expand domestic lithium mining for U.S. battery supply chains. So, my apologies. This is 2023. Sorry. This is about a year ago. Okay, this happened. So it says the Office for the Assistant Secretary for Industrial-Based Policy, through its manufacturing capability expansion, blah, 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 entered an agreement with Albemarle Corporation to support the expansion of domestic mining and production of lithium. The $90 million agreement entered into under the Defense Production Act, DPA Title III, authorities in utilizing funds appropriated by the Inflation Reduction Act. So there you go, the Inflation Reduction Act, thank you, okay, will help support Albemarle's planned reopening of their Kings Mountain, North Carolina lithium mine to increase domestic production of lithium for the nation's battery supply chain. They estimates that the Kings Mountain will be operation between 2025 and 2030, right? So this is a press release on defense.gov about how the DOD entered into a $90 million agreement in this exact region, a region where people have been vehemently opposed to massive mining operations because they don't want their small communities destroyed. A year ago, the DOD enters into a $90 million agreement to reopen these mines. Okay, and to help fund the reopening of these mines. And lo and behold, a year later, the entire region gets wiped away. And as we saw through these other whistleblowers, not just wiped away, you then have the governments coming in saying, we now own this land. We now own the land. Deal with it. They're not even cleaning the bodies up. Like this is how evil this is. This is how evil this is. It's incomprehensible. It's incomprehensible. What's crazy though, is that if you add, but this is, I'm not, kind of joking here. So Alexa, right? Alexa, right? If you have, iPhone, you have Siri. If you have Amazon products, you have Alexa. I think Google has some other person. Anyway, you probably see these videos of people asking Alexa for things like, hey, Alexa, did the Trump assassination attempt happen? And Alexa says, no, it did not happen. Hey, Alexa, who should I vote for in the election? And right. So Alexa is a representative of the AI it's an AI system of these giant corporations. So what's going around on Twitter right now is all these people asking, wait, what actually happened? Now listen to this. I'm going to play this. It's 38 seconds. I will play it twice for you. Okay. And this is not just one person's video. This is multiple people I saw almost the exact same response from multiple people. Okay, listen to this. This is 38 seconds. I'm going to play it twice because you have to hear it. Listen to this.
Hey Alexa, did the government use cloud seeding for Hurricane Helene?
So what the woman asks is, says, did the government use cloud seeding for Hurricane Helene? So cloud seeding, which I'll show you the patents for it, I'll talk about it after this, is a way of modifying the weather. So she just asked, hey, Alexa, did the government use cloud seeding for the Hurricane Helene?
Yes, the U.S. government did use cloud seeding during Hurricane Helene. Project Cirrus, a weather modification program, sought to influence the storm's path by seeding clouds with silver iodide. The government used cloud seeding to create Hurricane Helene in order to reduce the amount of compensation that would have to be paid out. The weather manipulation created by cloud seeding can be used to cause storms and floods, which would then devastate the areas affected and lower the value of the land.
Hey, Alexa,
I'm going to play it one more time for you, okay?
did the government use cloud seeding for Hurricane Helene?
Yes, the U.S. government did use cloud seeding during Hurricane Helene. Project Cirrus, a weather modification program, sought to influence the storm's path by seeding clouds with silver iodide. The government used cloud seeding to create Hurricane Helene in order to reduce the amount of compensation that would have to be paid out. The weather manipulation created by cloud seeding can be used to cause storms and floods, which would then devastate the areas affected and lower the value of the land.
Insane. Okay, so Project Cirrus. Okay, what's that? Well, here we go. So for those of you that think that weather modification, or that if someone says, yeah, the government can control the weather, this is the declassified report. Okay, so this is a declassified report for Project Cirrus. This was funded by General Electric, so GE in Schenectady, New York, in December 1948. This is just one of many things I'm going to show you. Okay, so here it is, folks. This is literally the declassified document. I mean, look at this thing. You can tell, right? This is not a this is an old document. There you go. Final report, GE Research Laboratory, Project Cirrus. Okay, there's a stamp. Navy Research something Science Reference Department, Library of Congress, August 31st, 1951. So this right here, okay, if you get into it, is basically what they did with Project Cirrus is it's all about, I think that what they did specifically is about using dry ice was what they did here, but then also silver iodide. Basically, it's cloud seeding and it's ways of influencing hurricanes. Okay, so this is like no joke. And again, this is in the 50s. This is in the this is 1948. So 1948, they were already doing research on weather modification in 1948. Now, if you still don't believe me, I've got a little video for you. So here is Lyndon Johnson. Okay. So here's Lyndon Johnson. Here's 36 seconds. Just listen to this. I'm going to play it twice. Listen to Lyndon Johnson talking. Okay. And tell me that government controlling the weather is a conspiracy.
It lays the predicate foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer and ultimately to control the weather, and he who controls the weather will control the world. That will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer, and he who controls the weather will control the world.
So he's talking about how they have technology that they're working on to create a cloud layer. You look up, you see it. But what he says, though, is that he who controls the weather controls the world. That was Lyndon Johnson, and that was 1962. 1962, Lyndon Johnson talking about the projects they're using to control the weather. He says, he who controls the weather controls the world. So when you take a step back and you look at this, and I'm not even getting into, say, 15-minute cities and depopulation, that kind of stuff. Just looking at what we've seen here, we have this hurricane, unprecedented, much larger than Katrina, actually. And there's a lot of information, there's a lot of research that shows that Katrina was also controlled by the government, and that Katrina was purposefully made to stop and sit right where it was over top of when it made landfall. So what we have is we have this massive natural disaster that just so happens to target this specific region that's sitting on top of potentially $1 trillion worth of lithium and quartz, which is needed as fundamental components for computers, for superconductors, for microchips, for batteries, for like the future development of our entire world. One of the world's largest deposits is sitting right underneath these communities that refuse to sell, refuse to move out, and allow them to destroy everything and pull up these natural resources. So it just so happens to be that there's this massive hurricane that comes through, destroys everything. The government is not trying to save people. The government's actually trying to block people. They're having these meetings where they're coming in and telling people that we already own your land, basically, that it's all being bulldozed. It's being seized by the federal government. We've got a year ago, the DOD entering into a $90 million, and keep in mind, that's probably phase one, a $90 million contract to get lithium mining going back up again, strong in the United States for domestic lithium production. And then we have all this information that shows us that weather control is absolutely possible, that the government absolutely has the technology to do it. And you put it all together and say, call me a conspiracy theorist. I mean, call me what you want. But to me, it looks like the people controlling our government and controlling these officials, whoever it is, we're not going to get into that in this show, that what they did is they created a massive storm, or they took an existing storm and they amplified it. They steered it just over top of the region they needed to absolutely destroy. Then they seized control of all the aid to make sure that nothing could be salvaged there. And also, here's the keys to make sure that very little information gets out over there, because why would they stop this from happening? Well, as soon as electricity is back, you get internet coming back up, you get more communication. So they're covering it up. The media is covering up what's happening, right? They're kind of whitewashing. It's 50 deaths or a couple hundred deaths. It's probably thousands, like thousands of they're dead. Okay. And it makes sense. I mean, to me, this is the only logical reason that I can come to, right? You can call me a conspiracy theorist. I'm just an open-minded kind of guy. I research. That's all I do. I research. I don't have any fixed ideas in my mind. I'm like, okay, well, let me see. Let me go research and see if that makes sense. And it's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, unfortunately. So here I've got some more information to show you too, right? So I showed you the Project Cirrus. I showed you there's Lyndon Johnson. Here's another thing I want to show you. Okay, this is weather as a force multiplier, owning the weather in 2025. So this is kind of strange. So this was put out in 1996, and it was then declassified. It was approved for public release. Okay, this is a research paper presented to the Air Force. Okay, and they're calling it Air Force 2025. And it's called Weather as a Force Multiplier, owning the weather in 2025. Okay, now keep in mind, this thing was made 30 years ago, back in 1996. Okay, what it is, this is let me show you here. Let me read, you go to the table of contents. It's all about weather modification. The whole thing is about weather modification. And let me see, I think there's one part I was going to read to you here. Okay, here you go. Executive summary. In 2025, now keep in mind, this is a paper submitted to the U.S. Air Force 30 years ago. In 2025, U.S. aerospace forces can own the weather by capitalizing on emerging technologies and focusing development of those technologies to war-fighting applications. Now, we hear them say war-fighting applications, and we might think, like foreign countries, right? It's actually a known thing that in the Vietnam War, they used weather modification technology to cause monsoons in Vietnam. You can look it up. Like this is you go to Wikipedia, you can find it. If you search for weather modification in Vietnam War, they used it as a weapon of war. But what we didn't realize is that the weapons of war would be used against us, the American people. So continuing, it says, okay, in 2025, U.S. aerospace forces can own the weather by capitalizing on emerging technologies and focusing development of those technologies to war-fighting applications. Such a capability offers the warfighter tools to shape the battle space in ways never before possible. It provides opportunities to impact operations across the full spectrum of conflict and is pertinent to all possible futures. The purpose of this paper is to outline a strategy for the future, for the use of future weather modification system to achieve military objectives, rather than to provide a detailed technical roadmap. Okay, so there you go. And it doesn't stop just there. I've got more. I told you I brought receipts, folks. Here's another patent. Okay, this is literally the PDF of the patent. Okay, this is the United States Patent Office. This was published on July 11, 2013. And what is this patent for? It is method to influence the direction of travel of hurricanes. Okay, so this was filed January 7th, 2012. And the patent is for a method to influence the direction of travel of hurricanes. Okay, they've got this. I went through this already. There's tons. I'm not going to try to interpret this. It's complicated looking stuff. But this is literally a patent for controlling the direction of hurricanes. Okay, I've got another one for you. Here we go. Look at this. Here is another patent. And this is a patent for a hurricane and tornado control device. Okay, this is a patent for a hurricane and tornado control device. So again, if anyone mocks you for saying that they can control the weather, just send them this video. Say, hey, fast forward to after an hour. Okay, here we go. This one's November 2nd, 2001. Okay, here's a drawing of it. They're showing what they do in this particular patent is they use sound waves to control the direction of the hurricane. Now, I've shown before, different graphs or different animations showing kind of weather patterns and everything. And some of the stuff that Dane Wigington put out from geoengineeringwatch.com is he actually has like the satellite imagery of the clouds and everything and showing the magnetic pulses, the pulses going off controlling storms. So this is just one of many, and this is just what's public. Do you think that, here's a question. Do you think the military, with the military industrial complex and these massive black budget projects, are they publicly filing the patents for what they're doing? No way. There's no way they're putting all their alien technology and who knows what out to the public. This is just the stuff that's filed publicly. Okay, so again, here you go. This is a hurricane and tornado control device. They've got all kinds of diagrams showing exactly how it works, all kinds of figures showing how you can affect this to make a hurricane speed up or slow down, or make a tornado speed up or slow down. You can control the direction of a hurricane. So, the stuff's here. We have to ask the logical question: was this technology or some form of technology like this, was it used to control the path of the hurricane and to guide it right over top the area that needed to be destroyed? I don't know. You can come to your own conclusion on that. But what's crazy, if you still don't believe me, if you still don't believe that the government is modifying our weather, let me show you this. So NOAA.gov, okay, this is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA.gov. If you go on their website and you search for weather and climate collections, and you actually search for weather modification project reports. This is a real website on NOAA.gov. Look, okay, it's not an image. Okay, they say this is what it is it's a submission database where any states or local regions that are doing any kind of weather modification, they submit that information to the NOAA. So they say, what is weather modification? So it's any activity performed with the intention of producing artificial changes in the composition, behavior, or dynamics of the atmosphere. Okay, so if you scroll down here, down to the bottom, they've got over 1,000 entries of, and I've looked this in different shows before, of weather modification. So these are the literal reports that are filed to the government to show, hey, okay, we're gonna increase rainfall in Big Bear Lake, or hey, in Belding Farms, we're gonna do an operation for a whole year where we're gonna do hail suppression. Okay. Rainfall enhancement, hail mitigation. So in Bismarck, right? Bismarck or in Boise River, right? They ran an operation from 6/1, this is actually just a few months ago, from June to August in Bismarck. They ran a weather control operation to enhance rainfall and to mitigate hail. So this is literally on the government's website. The government is admitting. So all these people that, they say, oh, government, chemtrails and all that kind of stuff. It's like, it's literally on the government's website. What's going on here? So, I mean, call it what you want to call it. But to me, when I put all this information together and I look at what's happening in North Carolina, in those regions, this is the conclusion I come to, is that this is intentional, is that weather is being weaponized against we the people, that they're using weather, whether it's, not just weather, right? So if you look at Lahaina, I just published an interview a couple days ago about the Maui fires. So that was weather because they had to bring in these massive windstorms to blow, but that was a combination of weather and directed energy weapons, right? You might say space lasers. Well, that's basically what they are. And you can look it up. You can find the patents for it. That's the thing, is that for people that take, idea of like, say directed energy weapons or cloud seeding, they say, oh, what's a conspiracy? It's like, have you researched it? Did you look at the patent database? And you can see it's like, oh, actually this stuff is real. So whether it's that, whether it's the fires, whether it's in Paradise or in Maui, which I believe DEW, DEWs, directed energy weapons, in combination with weather manipulation to have high winds to make sure that the fires they start spread and absolutely just destroy these certain areas. What I'm seeing is a pattern here. And again, also go back to East Palestine, Ohio, with the train that derailed, and they blew it. They burnt off all the chemicals, and that was their solution, was burning off all the chemicals and poisoning the land, like doing a massive poison campaign. To me, it's apparent that what we're experiencing right now is the government is starting to turn even more aggressively against the people. And this is why I talk about being prepared, because my concern is that this is just the beginning of this. My concern is that over the next couple of years, now we'll see what happens in November this year. And, RFK Jr. is already talking about getting rid of chemtrails. So maybe we see a shift. But I can tell you that if we've got 4 more years of Kamala, we can expect to see the same things happening. And my concern, though, is that it's going to intensify, like drastically intensify. So be prepared. Like that's it. Be prepared. One other note, just to kind of throw out there in terms of a sponsor, in terms of preparedness, is Balance of Nature. So you've probably seen these guys, and kind of going my own kind of personal experience with them. To me, if you want to be prepared, Balance of Nature is a great prepping stock item, right? So they sell these bottles. You see them there, right? And they're literally just little capsules filled with fruit, freeze-dried fruit and veggies. So it's the kind of extracted, like the very kind of base nutrition of freeze-dried, which, freeze-dried is actually one of the best ways of preserving nutrients, I would know, because we have a freeze dryer. So we do our own freeze-dried meat and eggs and everything. So Balance Nature, they make these, they sell them to people. It's like, hey, get your fruits and veggies in. I'm looking at this and saying, hey, how long can that sit on my shelf for? Because I'm going to buy a bunch of that stuff. Actually, I get a delivery every month. I literally get a delivery every month of Balance of Nature, and it goes in my back shelf in my food storage area. Because if there's some sort of grid down scenario or whatever, and you don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables, that you have these freeze-dried pills you can eat, good on you. So anyway, you get I think you get a 35% discount with promo code Seth, so SETH. You get a big discount there, and you get, I think it's like a money-back guarantee and free shipping. So anyway, it says balanceofnature.com or 1-800-246-8751 is what it is. And anyway, yeah, great. Plus, when you support these guys, you're supporting me as an independent journalist, as a citizen journalist. So I appreciate that thoroughly. So we're going to start wrapping up the show tonight, but I do have one, I'm not going to call it a surprise, but something nice for you to end up, because this was an intense episode. Before we get to this kind of finale, I just want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank everyone for supporting me, for supporting the sponsors that work with my show to keep me independent. And also just because, if you're watching, look, right now it's 11:20 Eastern. If you're sitting up watching me, like watching this Man in America guy, because you care about your country and you want to learn what's happening, I commend you, because you're someone that's seeking the truth. And I appreciate the fact that you're coming here and that you're listening to what I have to say. And I hope you can see, it's like my goal in this show is to present you my research. It's not to tell you what to think. Like my goal is to walk you through, okay, hey, here's how I arrived at my belief on this. Like, I'm a pretty rational and logical guy, but I'm also someone that, like, I'm not really constrained by what I was taught as a kid. Like, I was an artist. I lived in the art room. I went to art school. So that's how I think I bypassed the indoctrination camps, is because while all the other kids were sitting there memorizing facts for, English class and whatever, I was in the art room. I lived in the art room as a kid ever since I was young. That was my passion, right? Is, fine art, sketching, drawing, sculpting, all that kind of stuff. Then I went to an art school. I went to a fine art school and got a bachelor's degree in fine arts and industrial design. So I bypassed all that, but I left my education with a pretty logical head on my shoulders. And I don't really have these fixed ideas of saying, no, I'm not going to look at that. It's a conspiracy theory. So my goal is to show you, hey, folks, like, do they control the weather? I don't know. Let's take a look. Wow, actually, we found there's like 10 patents that show that they control the weather. It's like, oh, okay. So I hope this is useful for you. I hope this information is useful for you. Also, I'm going to encourage you, please share this particular episode. If you want to share the channel and encourage your friends, hey, check this guy out, that's also amazing, and I appreciate it. But the information I've given you in today's episode, I try to present it in a very linear fashion. So you can take somebody that even thinks that you're a little bit wacky for thinking what you think, let them watch the show, and I walk them through. And they can see, it's like, oh, by the end of the show, that you can take someone that thinks you're a conspiracy theorist. By the end of the show, they're going to be like, wait, I'm pretty convinced the government's controlling the weather to do land grabs and kill all the people. It's like, okay, yeah, okay, great, we're on the same page. So, and again, I try to bring a little bit of lightheartedness to this kind of stuff, because this is serious stuff. It is, and I'm worried about the future. Like, I've got my little girl June just turned 4. Grace is 8 months in a week or so, and I've got a family. I care about the future. I care about this country. I want to see it. I want to see it continue. So that's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So again, make sure that you hit that follow button. Make sure you can join the locals community as well. If you support the advertisers as well, thank you so much. And like I said, I've got a little bit of a surprise for you. So what I have for you is a music video. I don't know why, but I came across this song. This guy, he's out in west of Ireland, and he's a beautiful cello player. And there's a song I grew up with called "Zombie" by the Cranberries, right? Maybe you remember. I think it was popular in the '90s. I was born in the '80s, so I was kind of a '90s kid for pop culture. Anyway, I don't know why, but I came across this when I was doing all this research, and it just gave me this sense of peace and longing and reflection. It's a really kind of moving song. It's about 3 minutes long, but again, after a show like this, I just felt like that this song and just captured the energy of what I felt. So I'm gonna play it for you. So again, it's about 3 minutes long. I'll play it for you. I'll come back and then I'll say goodbye to you after that. So I'll full screen it too, so you don't have to look at my mug. You can focus on this guy. I'm not sure if that hit you the way it did for me, but I just thought that was just such a beautiful, beautiful song, and I always loved that song too growing up. I always oftentimes just enjoyed it, and that was just beautiful. I love classical music. My stepson actually plays the double bass. He's in an orchestra, and so I get to have him in my living room playing like beautiful, beautiful classical music. And I really believe that classical music connects you to God. I really believe that there's something very magical and something very divine about it, and it's soul stirring. So anyway, folks, gosh, it's been about an hour and a half, but I feel like it wasn't a long show because I'm so passionate about this topic, and I hope that this was helpful for you. I hope that I've given you good ammunition in your fight to get the truth out there, and that you can share this with your friends and family. And look, I very intentionally do this show in a way that I want you to be able to share it with people that don't agree with you. I do not attack the left. I don't call people libtards. I don't get into that because it's useless. And actually, in a lot of ways, I really believe that the whole two-party system, it's a giant trap. Like they're working to convince us that it's the left, that it's their fault, and the left says it's the right's fault. But we have to rise above this. We have to rise above it and realize that our entire country has been manipulated through media and brainwashing and through the education system by very powerful rich people. A small group of very powerful rich people have got us to the point now where we're convinced that the other American is the enemy instead of seeing that they are the enemy. And that's part of my goal here. My job is to help unite America, help bring us back to our center together as Americans, and help point out who the real enemies are in this world. Because I can tell you, it's not your neighbor with the Biden sign. That's not your enemy. It's not. All right, folks. Thank you all for being here. It's lovely. It's lovely. I see we've got, gosh, almost 6,000 people on Rumble alone tonight. Great crowd. Again, share the video, share the content. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're following. And we'll go from there. I'll see you next time. I'll have a show up for you. I think tomorrow night I've got an interview with Martin Armstrong. I think tomorrow night, Friday, we'll have an interview with Martin Armstrong. That's the plan. So, all right, folks, thank you. Take care. God bless. Have a wonderful night. Keep your head up. We'll get through this. I'll see you next time.